Glad to be here. My name is Chad Flinn. I'm a trades educator out here in beautiful British Columbia. Been in the education game now for close to 11 years. Absolutely love it. And like I tell my students, they will drag me kicking and screaming from the building when it comes time for me to retire. I've been involved in starting up my own business. I worked up north in the oil sands during the great booms of the early 2000s, which was a surreal experience and something maybe we'll talk about later on. And just absolutely thrilled to be here. And one thing I'd just love to say is you're listening to the Tools of the Trade Monthly Toolbox Talk.
Welcome, please welcome
to another episode of the Tools of the Trade Podcast, your number one construction industry resource. Hear conversations with industry professionals to get the tools, stories, and advice that you need to set your career on fire. You're now streaming the Tools of the Trade Podcast.
The Tools of the Trade monthly Toolbox Talks are proudly presented by the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum. The Canadian Apprenticeship Forum has something called the Apprentices in Canada e-panel. And this e-panel is an initiative the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum undertakes on behalf of its members. The e-panel collects insights, ideas, and feedback of apprentices using online surveys, helping to identify new ways to overcome training and workplace challenges. This community of more than 3,500 participants provides information on experiences from inside the Canadian apprenticeship system. They reach out regularly to the pre-apprentices, apprentices, and early career journey persons who are members of the e-panel for their feedback so they can better understand the issues that stand to impact recruitment, retention, and training outcomes. Regular reports and semi-annual snapshots allow stakeholders to identify challenges and opportunities and get a sense of big picture trends in the apprenticeship and trades training. Apprentice insights are regularly shared through one-pagers and survey reports on specific topics. Please, guys, encourage apprentices in your network to share their experiences by sending them to www.apprenticesInCanada.com. And for more information on the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, head over to caf-fca.org. Again, send your apprentices to www.apprenticesInCanada.com. And for more information about the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, again, head to caf-fca.org. What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning into another episode of the Tools of the Trade monthly Toolbox Talks. I'm your host, Colin Toop, and in this Toolbox Talks segment, I sat down with Chad Flinn, who's an electrician by trade and teacher of the first-year electrical program, as well as Apprentice to CEO program at Bcit. In this conversation, we get into how Chad found his way out of the field and into educating, the open education model, educational tech, and some thoughts on how COVID is going to forever change the educational landscape, what Chad is noticing from the enrollment side of the electrical program and its relation to the skills gap or lack thereof in certain trades, and I guess for that matter, certain provinces, advice for apprentices, and how we can break some stigmas of the industry. As a Bcit alumni, I took their electrical program, which is how I got my Red Seal, and my FSR, which is now, I believe, called Master Electrician certificate. This episode really meant a lot to me, and I was super thankful for the opportunity provided by Marita. So Marita, if you're listening to this episode, thank you so much for connecting me with Chad, and I hope that we can get more people involved in the conversation. To get in touch with Chad, and for show notes, pop over to toolspodcast.com/August. Now, please join me in welcoming the passionate educator, Chad Flinn. Chad Flinn, fellow electrician. We have so much in common, which you just found out before we got on the episode. I'm really happy to have you on, man.
That's awesome. I didn't know that you knew Adam. It's funny that because Adam and I do every year we get together and do this trades panel for Bcit. And so we've gotten to know each other and kind of back and forth messaged once in a while. He actually hired a couple of my students. So he's a bit of a buddy, and it's funny that it's such a small world. You're over there in Toronto, I'm over here in BC, and Adam's the connecting point. So that's hilarious.
Adam and I used to hang out here and there. We went to different high schools, but we knew each other then. And then when I had my business out in Vancouver, obviously we went to trade school around the same time. I think he graduated a year earlier than I did. And then when he first started his company, I worked for him a little bit on the side, just getting things going with him. And then I went off and did my thing, and he's still doing his thing. And now I'm out here. So it's 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, no doubt. And you were up north, you said. You were working up in the oil sands?
Yeah. So I was up there, I guess, what year would that have been? I'm trying to think back. I think it was around between 2009 and 2012. And I started off doing well pads for Husky Energy. And then I transitioned into commissioning heat trace for Kent's, who's now owned by SNC-Lavalin. And then I came back down and did some not oil and gas, some potash mining. So I've kind of seen a lot of the up north stuff that Canada has to offer in terms of electrical. What about you?
Crazy. I was up there from 2000 until 2009. I left right after kind of the big the economy the tank there.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. I went up there right as a fresh green journeyman. I just got my ticket and my boss said there was not a lot of work happening down here. So I heard I had a friend who moved up to Fort Mac and said, you got to come up here. He was a heavy duty mechanic. He said, it's like the land of milk and honey. So I was like, for sure. So I packed up my 1982 Volkswagen Rabbit with my wife and put everything in storage and drove up and lived in his basement for a couple months while we figured things out. And
wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was great what an amazing experience to go from, did my apprenticeship in climate control systems down here in British Columbia, and to go up to the industrial world of Fort McMurray was a total mind shift. And it was unbelievable. Such a good time. Learned so much. And by the time I left, I was actually an operations manager for a company called Centurion Energy. So we were the instrumentation electrical. We did a lot of commissioning and startup for Nexen out there.
Right.
And then economy took a tank, and I thought, you know what, the stress of running this company isn't worth it. I had a son who's down here. I was commuting, doing an 8 and 6. I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. So I started looking for work. So I started applying for jobs. There was 3 jobs I applied for down here in BC. I applied for 2 controls companies. I had a ton of experience, ton of PLC experience, ton of DCS, all this crazy good experience, and never heard back from them. And I thought my one Hail Mary was Bcit was looking for an instructor. I thought there's no way, but whatever, I'll throw in a resume anyways. Got the call the next day, went in for like 3 interviews. And then a week later, I was in front of a class teaching. It was terrifying and exciting all at the same time.
Do you think that part of your barrier to entry with those controls companies was the fact that you did work up north? Because I know that there's a stigma attached to the guys that go up there and milk it, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. And those guys that kind of, shame on them for doing that to us, because there's a few of us that went up there and worked our butts off, right? And used every opportunity that was given to us. But there's such a weird stigma about people. And it's true. Like you hear stories about going to sites and you go into the hoarding and you see cots set up, or you see like chessboards laid out on the ground. And I saw it too. So it's frustrating that it occurs out there. But there's so much good work being done up there and so much cool technology being installed and lots of great people. Like some of my best friends I still have I'm in contact with every day up there. So it's too bad that the bad ones make the good ones look so bad, right? But yeah, I totally think that was, he's from Fort Mac. And then they think you're arrogant too. That's one thing. I had one guy who did a phone interview with me and was just like pushing at me, like acting like I knew it all. I was like, no, I don't know it. I don't know it all. But he's like, you think you're better than me? I was like, I never said that. This is going sideways.
That's hilarious. You know, what's funny is one of my barriers to entry actually was coming to Toronto and being from the West Coast.
Really?
People thought I was like a laid back, weed smoking BC kid that just liked to play around in the mountains and didn't want to get any work done. They're like, do you guys even work Fridays over there when it's nice out? I heard you guys take every Friday off. I'm like, what are you talking about?
It's so crazy. We're in the same country, people.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's hilarious.
Cool. Well, you already segued into the fact that you've applied at Bcit, but how about you just introduce yourself a little bit further and go into detail about exactly what you do at Bcit?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been teaching there for 11 years now, and I started out teaching second-year apprenticeship, and it was because I had a background in controls. They thought that usually you kind of work your way up from foundation, which is entry trades training, and then move your way up to 4th year, whatever. So they started me at second year, and I fell in love with teaching. Like it's one of those things. I always loved training my apprentices. I always, even when I was a kid, thought I might go into teaching. But once and I'm sure you probably know what I'm talking about, Colin, but once you kind of find that zone of where you're supposed to be, it just feels like magic. And I'm not saying it's not hard work, but when I got in front of that class and I started teaching and able to connect with my students and not just lecture, but actually connect with them and form relationships and get to know them and build them up and to become better people and help have them do the same to me, it just was like one of those synergy moments. So I just kept working at it. Along the way, had a couple kids. So I've got 4 kids now, so that's kept me busy. And been teaching, and I actually ended up teaching out. I teach at the main campus in Burnaby. And then about 3-4 years ago, there was an opportunity to take one of the satellite campuses, which is closer to my home, but I would be teaching foundation, which is entry-level trades training. So you're teaching the students that never touched a tool before. And speaking of stigmas, everybody thinks that, teaching foundation is kind of taking a step down. I'm not saying everybody thinks that, but there's a stigma about that.
Okay.
I figured I'd go for it because I like the idea of working a little bit closer from home. I like the younger students and being able to kind of get them before they actually build their bad habits. And then I just fell in love with my teaching practice even more. So I started working with getting them to use the tools, a lot more hands-on access as opposed to just theory, and just kind of fell in love all over again with my teaching and started kind of working with them and getting them to start building their own resources. Because one thing I always hated as a student was sitting in a class and like the Ferris Bueller's Day Off teacher just kind of droning on and on, right? Just talking and then asking quite like Bueller. And I never wanted to be that teacher. So I started trying to figure out ways that I could get them to engage more with the content. And so I started getting them to kind of build their own textbooks, I call it. Because the textbooks that they use, they're great, but for a lot of them, it goes way over their head. So I thought, why not have them put this stuff in their own words? So I started doing that. And when I started doing that, I realized that there's this thing called open pedagogy, which is a big fancy word for involving your students in their own learning. And then from there, I got super excited about the fact that this was actually a thing. So I ended up doing my master's, and I'm just finishing up now on my master's of arts and learning and technology at Royal Rose University. Based on my thesis was the co-creation of open educational resources with trade students. So basically having students build their own resources as opposed to having them just read. So instead of them just being talked to, they actually have to create. So I had my students build their own textbooks, build their own videos, design their own labs, and all within the context of electrical trades training. They're all first-year students too. So it was good. It's exciting. And it kind of leads me up. And also along the way too, it's been a busy few years, is the School of Business was looking at putting together a course on entrepreneurship for trades. And so I thought I'd apply for that as well. And I got the job and helped design the course. And it's been running now for 5 years and been doing really well. Absolutely loving it. So we call that one Apprentice to CEO. So taking people from the beginning and helping them set up their business. Because as you know, as an entrepreneur, we're really good at our trade. We're really good at our tools, but not necessarily so good at the business side of it. So trying to give tradespeople the tools they need to keep their business running.
Awesome. Well, there's so much to unpack there that I want to ask you further about. Had a light here that was shining on my face and it went out. So funny that a light would go out while 2 electricians are having a conversation. But
it's a bad joke.
The first thing that I really wanted to ask you, and this is something that comes up in a lot of my interviews, and the reason why is because I'm super curious about this. You look at a guy like yourself and you're super passionate about what you do. And I find that a lot of us in life in general are looking to find our passion. And so I'm curious if any of this was in the cards for you when you were growing up. Like, what did you want to be when you were a kid? And do you think that you just stumbled across this passion by chance?
That's a great question. Wow. I don't think it's by chance. I really believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe there's an intentionality to absolutely everything that occurs. When I look back now, like I'm 47 years old. And so I look back a little bit at the way my life path has gone. I was always interested in working with people. I always was a people person, an introvert for sure. But at the same time, I love spending time with people and I love helping build people up. So it's always been a thing that I can look back to and see. Always was that student in school that loved to help coach their friends in the classes. So I did well in school. So I was always helping my friends with that. So that was always kind of there. And then technical side of things too. Like it's funny, my dad was an engineer. So in the summers and on weekends, he would always kind of farm me out to the trades that needed help. And I was always the laborer. And I vowed when I was like in grade, I remember 15, I was never going to go into the trades. Screw that. There was not one chance I'd ever go into the trades. Right.
Wow.
So the university comes along, I go to university and I'm a typical like 90s guy. I was in a band and, didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. Basically went into English Lit because I really liked reading and, thought that that'd be a good route to go. So, but then I ended up kind of got to my third year university, got a ton of student loans and decided I need to take a year off to pay them down. Ended up getting a job working for an electrical contractor. It was only supposed to be for a couple of weeks. And we joke around that was the longest 2 weeks of my life because ended up being a 4-year apprenticeship. But it's funny, like just watching all how it went. I felt like it always kind of guided me to where I was supposed to be now. And education, I thought I would end up being a teacher, but then I thought, well, being an electrician kind of side railed that. But here I am now, and I'm just finishing up my master's, and I am a teacher, and I'm teaching in lots of different areas. And yeah, it's funny how life just kind of, if you let it, it kind of takes you where you're supposed to go, I think. And you just kind of be open to that.
I think you're right. And I think myself included, but I think a lot of people put too much focus behind trying to find that thing when it's probably right there in front of them. They're too busy reading the book and trying to get in contact with the person that's going to tell them the secret when they probably just need to do a bit of self-reflection.
Oh, and that's one thing, if talking about Adam, like him and I talk about that all the time, is this letting, and I know it sounds woo-woo, but letting the universe kind of direct you where you need to go, right? And like you said, I love what you just said there about how we spend too much time looking for it when maybe it's right there. And maybe the thing that you're doing is what you're supposed to be doing. Maybe there's something really cool in that thing that you're doing that will take you into another direction. Right? Like teaching, I've always loved technology and programming and that sort of stuff too. And you would think, okay, teaching trades, you never get into that. But here I am now, I'm working with ed tech, like educational technologies and all that. Like it's taken me exactly to where I always wanted to go. And I look back and I feel so blessed. But the times that got me to where I am are the times that I just kind of let things happen. And not that you're just supposed to be like the BC pot smoking guy that takes every Friday off, but you got to have some direction. It's that fine dance, I guess, right? You want to spend some time pushing and being ambitious, but other times just kind of listening and knowing yourself too, right? Getting to know yourself makes a huge difference.
Yeah. So you have 4 kids, you teach all these courses. It seems like you've got your foot in all sorts of educational technology and you're doing all these things. How do you find the time?
I don't sleep a lot. Well, one of the kids is like, he's 10 months old and so we're up really early, and I've always been a morning person anyways. So I don't know. I always get, it's like you said, the passion, right? Like I'm doing stuff that I want to do and have fun doing. So all this stuff that I'm doing, the ed tech stuff and all that, that's all like the stuff when I would normally be just sitting around watching TV or having a beer or whatever. I'm working on that stuff or making a video. And to me, that's how I unwind, right? So that's how I find the time. And I get up super early. I get up at 4 a.m. and kind of hit the day running from there. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you actually touched on this or not, if I glossed over it by accident, but you didn't want to be in the trades and then you got into the trades eventually. What was that shift like? Like, how did your mind shift into saying, I'm going to pursue this? And then where did electrical come from?
So electrical, that's a great question. Actually, like I said, I had a lawn care company that I was working on over the summers that I started with a buddy. We called ourselves Yardbirds. And in the fall, as all lawn care companies happen, it was slowing down. And so this friend of mine, he already had a day job, but I was running out of work. And so he said, hey, a cousin of mine has this electrical company and they just need somebody to help kind of glue pipe together and put it in a ditch for a couple of weeks. Maybe that can tide you over while you figure out what you're doing, your next step. And I thought, sure, that's cool. So I called the guy up and, we talked and he said, yeah, come on out. We'll put you to work for a couple of weeks. Then when I went out there, I started realizing that a lot of it was this automation stuff. And I started realizing that the trade wasn't what I thought the trade was, right? I thought it was all electrical, was all just wiring houses, running Lumex, putting lights up for people and that sort of thing. I didn't realize that there was this industrial control side to things. And so, yeah, I was gluing pipe in a ditch, but then we got to pull the wire through the pipe in the ditch. Then we got to wire up the relay cabinets. And it was a small company. And we really, we all got along really well. So they ended up offering me an apprenticeship. And so it was in an area that I really, really enjoyed. I loved automation. I loved programming anyways. And to realize that I was the one that was able to bring the wires to the controller and then do the programming as well. That was the mind shift, was to realizing that the trades aren't always what you think they are. And I think that's a big thing I'm finding with my students too, is I have a lot of students come in now to my foundation program that have gone on, they've got degrees and they just didn't like the office job and wanted something, and they'd never really thought about the trades until a friend of theirs said, no, it's not what you think it is. It's totally different. So there's that stereotype again of what trades is. Once I changed that mind shift, everything changed.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I was actually doing some reflecting about a specific sentence that's been in my vocabulary quite a bit lately, and that's getting our youth interested in apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. And what I realized is when I was going to school, and even still in a lot of trade schools, it's not all youth. Like, oh, sure, we want to attract more youth into the trades and we want it to be a first choice career pathway, but it really is for everybody at any point in their life. And most of the people that I've talked to in the last couple of months found trades after college degree, or after, deciding that they didn't like what they were doing or that they couldn't find a job.
It's crazy, right? And it's funny because I feel like trades was like the best kept secret in North America for the longest time, but now the word's out, right? Somebody let it out and said, no, you can make wicked amount of money. Like I had a student once post on Instagram, he just got his ticket and he's like, I'm a 6-figure student. And he said, except it's not the same way you are. And he talked about how 6-figure students, when you go to university, is you come out of university with owing 6 figures. He's coming out of trade school making 6 figures, right? And that's the cool thing about this whole thing. And it's not only that, like, yeah, you make good money, but the work is actually really cool and really fun. And you get great exercise. The people you work with, I mean, oh my gosh, I've met so many people that have become lifelong friends or changed my life in such a different way from working in the trades. It's, again, like I could shout it from the mountaintops over here in BC, but it's not what you think it is. If you think trades is just for dumb guys that couldn't do well in high school, you're wrong.
Yeah, no kidding. It's funny. I was actually doing some research for this conversation to get to know you a little better so I could make sure that I wasn't stumbling too much through this conversation. And it's one thing to hear us talk about how you're passionate about being a teacher and all this stuff, but I want to read to you a quote that I found. It's actually on a website called, what is it here? I believe it's ratemyprofessor.com, and it goes, best teacher I've had at Bcit. Almost all of their teachers read word for word out of the damn white binder. Chad has the best teaching method. He gives you clear to the point notes, waits for you to finish writing before talking, and gives us a lot of questions to do right after. So it's tattooed in your brain, and he's funny too. So I thought that was like an awesome picture of the type of person you are and just how much you're embodying your role as a teacher. And so with the first year program that you're teaching, is that pre-apprenticeship or is that just straight up first year electrical? And is there a difference anymore? I'm kind of out of touch.
No, there totally is. It's pre-apprenticeship. So what the difference between the two is, pre-apprenticeship is when you come out of high school or you're not really sure what you want to do. Like you have an idea what electrical is, but not really. So a lot of what you do is you come into the pre-apprenticeship program. It's 6 months long. And so you come in, you get the theory, you get hands-on. That's the difference between apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship, is we teach you how to bend pipe. We teach you how to wire up circuits. We get your hands involved. We get you wiring BX, Lumex, stripping, cutting boxes, all that. You don't get that in apprenticeship. Then you also get a lot of the second year apprenticeship schooling as well. And so when you finish pre-apprenticeship, you get credit for being done year one schooling. And then you can go on and then you go get indentured by a company who will carry you on as an apprentice. With apprenticeship, you have to go out, and it's the way I did it. You find somebody who's willing to indenture you. Then it's a 10-week course, right? And then it's the same thing that we all went through. 10 weeks, you work for a year. 10 weeks, you work for a year. So you get a lot more in depth. We can slow down a little bit in pre-apprenticeship, so we don't have to rush through. Because I mean, you did the apprenticeship. It's crazy. It's head down, butt up, go, go, go the whole time you're in school, right?
Yeah.
No time to breathe. And nice thing with pre-apprenticeship is it's got 6 months. So if I feel like my class, say like I've got combination circuits coming up next week, struggle point for a lot of students. If I feel like the class isn't getting it, I can spend a couple days on it and make sure that they're getting it and working through it and then moving on, right?
Yeah,
So.
you know what? The reason I asked was because I actually did BCIT's pre-apprenticeship, but I wasn't sure if there was still like a legitimate first year class where you don't do the pre-apprenticeship side.
There is, and it's funny though, the pre-apps courses, there's a huge waiting list for it. It seems to be more and more popular because a lot of employers want their students to have that foundation, right? Because then you don't get the green guys. You get, they haven't worked really hard, but at least they know what you're talking about when you say, pass me the clients, or where's your channel locks, or go grab that roll of Lumex. Mm-hmm. You get a green guy, you're starting right from ground zero.
Do you find, maybe this is some data that you may not have like good stats on, but do you find that the success of apprentices that go through pre-app and get into working with a company is higher than somebody that goes through traditional first year?
Yeah, I wish I could say yes to that, because I really do believe that it would be that way, but I don't know, because my only experience is teaching the pre-apprenticeship. So my only experience with my students that I keep in contact with are pre-app students. So they go on, almost every single one of my students goes on to a job if they want it and continues on. But Yeah, I don't know about the apprenticeship one.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that's come up in a recent conversation with France Davio, who's the executive director of the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, was that, we keep telling kids or youth or anybody that there's this massive skills gap, labor shortage, and then we go and send them through their first year of school. And then when they go out into the workplace, they get turned down quite frequently. And I was curious if you think there's anything that the education system could add or supplement or do a bit better to help bridge the gap from an apprentice to an employer.
Yeah, I do think there's some areas. I think education is changing. I think COVID has really kind of shone a light on that. I think a lot of what our students can learn is something that they can pull up on their phone, right? Like why are we making our students memorize things when Google's there right in their pocket? I think we do need to be working on more of the soft skills, like working on the essential skills, document reading, drawings, just even reading comprehension, soft skills, organization skills, like that sort of thing. If we could show that our students are coming out of these programs, know how to use spreadsheets, know how to actually organize a job, know how to build a parts list and all that stuff. If we can get those kind of more hands-on skills, the other stuff, it is important. I'm not saying that the theory isn't important, but I think if we can focus more on those soft skills and make our employers a little more hireable, or employees, students, a little more hireable that way, it can make a huge impact on industry, right? Because you're bringing these people in. And so often we've all worked with those tradespeople that are amazing tradespeople, but they're garbage people, and they don't know how to manage people.
Right.
But it's a skill just like anything else. So if we could teach our students how to collaborate and how to run jobs and how to run crews, and even if they don't go on to run crews, at least they have an empathetic understanding of what a crew leader does and what a foreman does. So they might be a little nicer to them and work harder for them. So yeah.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
my soapbox.
What kind of things are you teaching in the Apprentice to CEO program? Thinking back, if that was 5 years ago, I was definitely well out of my apprenticeship by then, and I wish that I could have taken it. But I'd be curious to know, like, what drove the program into fruition, like what started it, and what types of things you guys teach in that course.
What started it was Coast Capital Savings saw a lot of tradespeople coming in, starting with bank accounts, and then realizing that, just like you said, there's a skills shortage that's happening. So a lot of people are looking to trades and looking to start trades, like you did, like I did, like Adam did. And so they also started finding out that a lot of these tradespeople, like we said, are really good on the tools, but they don't understand the business side of things. So they came to Bcit and they said, we would like to work in partnership with you to put together a course to help these trades businesses just get the basic understanding of how to run a business. Some people are amazing at it. Like a guy like Adam, he's just intuitively good at business, right? But there's so many guys out there that start these businesses. And if you read this book called The E-Myth, they talk about how they have it's a technician with an entrepreneurial seizure. So They get the idea that they want to make the money, but then when they get into it, they don't understand that, as they start to get busier and busier and busier, they're going to have to hire people. Well, that's going to drive their profit margin down, but that's not a bad thing. And how money needs to move, and debt's not bad, like all these other things that we need to talk about. And they came to Bcit, and then I talked to them, and we all worked together in building this course. So basically the idea behind it is it's just a roadmap. At the end of it, they walk away with a business plan. So I spend the first week just talking about what's your why, like why are you going into business here? That's important. It's not just to make money, because money is just a byproduct. It's not why you're in business. Like I've got a great example as a friend of mine. He does very well, just a one-man operation as a reno guy. His why for Nate, would be that he loves making people feel safe and secure. It doesn't matter what Nate did. If he was a realtor at one point in his career, if he was a teacher, whatever, his whole driving force behind everything that Nate does is to make people feel comfortable. So he takes that, and that's his superpower in his business. And so he uses that, and he makes sure he's in constant contact with his clients, always like sends an update at the end of the day via text, all these little things. So we talk about the why, and then we start getting into like the nitty gritty, the business side of things, like the nuts and bolts of it, how to incorporate sole proprietorship, business partnerships, don't do it, that sort of stuff. And then like getting an accountant, we talk about cash flow projections, the financial side of things. Then I get into operating systems, which I think that's where a big hole is for trades, is they don't know how to run a business in the sense of how to track jobs, how to budget, how to make sure that you're on task and on track on your jobs. Because so many entrepreneurs, what they'll do is they'll just do the job, then they'll collect the receipts afterwards and then discover that they've lost money after the job's been done, right? And then you got to go back to the client and try to get it, which the client hates, and then, or you don't, and you just lose money. So putting systems in place to prevent that from happening. Safety systems, again, that's a big gap in the area that we all know that we have to have WorkSafe BC out here in BC, but just being aware of the OH&S standards and how dangerous it can be out there and how liable you are as a business owner. And then marketing, that's a huge one as well. So social media is absolutely key. So I talk about that, having a website, all that fun stuff, promoting yourself, having a blog or a vlog or whatever. I mean, that's something you could talk to Adam about. There's a guy that can really crush it on as far as his branding is concerned.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What types of people are enrolling in this program? Is it actually apprentices, or is it kind of anybody that wants to be a trades business owner?
Both. I get people that I had one student that was like in pre-app taking the course. And so I don't know if that would be the best time to start, but why not? But I've had some people come in that they're thinking of starting the business. Some people are just dabbling in the side jobs and want to kind of are thinking about taking it to the next step. And I've had people that have been running businesses that have like 20 people working for them that had never taken a business course before and just want to kind of get caught up and get an idea of what's going on out there. And so I get right from like apprentice to CEO, literally. I get the range in there for students.
Interesting. And how long does that course run for?
12 weeks. So it's 12 weeks. Every week's kind of laid out at a different part of the business plan.
That's awesome. And it's every day, or is it evenings?
No, it's evenings. And that's the only, we started it working it on Saturdays. And so it was over 4 Saturdays. That was brutal because a lot of people do side jobs on Saturdays. So it was difficult for them to get there and to pack that much information. It was like 6 hours a day on Saturdays over 4 weeks is too much. So we broke it out over Thursdays. It's a Thursday night or a Monday night. And so just 3 hours. But then we're still running into issues with people making the time to do it. So not lucky for us, but one of the silver linings of COVID is we've been able to put the course online. So that opens it up to a lot of people who couldn't take it before. And there's a lot of people who wanted to take the course and we're waiting for it to go online. So it hopefully starting September, well, definitely starting September, we've got the first intake going for a fully online apprentice CEO.
Awesome. More of Tools of the Trade in just a minute, but before we get back to the episode, I want to talk to you about our sponsor, Company Cam. Company Cam is your project photo organization solution, bar none, hands down, 100%. Every photo and video that your crews take at a job is now automatically organized by location and instantly synced from the field to wherever you are. Now you'll know exactly what's happening across your company, be able to communicate more effectively, and cover your butt from future claims. You can document your jobs, communicate with your crews, and protect your company all with Company Cam, the only app that every contractor needs. This app has been battle tested by me. I use it on my jobs as a project manager. Many guests on this podcast have also used Company Cam to organize their project photos, and it truly is your one-stop shop solution for organizing your company and your company photos. Company Cam is also now totally free. Believe it or not, if you want to take advantage of their free account, which is 3 users and up to 50 projects, you can head over to companycam.com/tools. You can upgrade at any time. Sign up is quick, it's easy, and no credit card is required. So you can start right now. To discover which plan fits your needs and to get your company started, head over again to companycam.com/tools to get your photos organized and take back control of your project photo organization. It seems as though you're working on educational tech prior to COVID, probably a few years before that. You've been interested in the space. And then COVID happened, and now we're here kind of going into phase 3, as they call it. And we're starting to open back up here, at least in Toronto. I know you guys are a little bit further ahead. Your curve flattened a bit quicker. But I'd be curious to know, it's kind of a big question. Like, when did it pop up on your guys' radar? What did the first few weeks look like? What did you learn from it? And where are you at right now?
In regards to the whole COVID and trades education?
Yeah, trades education and COVID.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. So it happened for us like it did for the rest of the world. Like March 23rd was our last day. We had a professional development day that day. And so at the end of it, our chief instructor said, just so you know, be aware, we might be giving you a call. There might be something going on come Monday. And so I got a call on Sunday from our chief instructor, Ted, saying, hey, we need you to come in. We're looking at having to do this online. And so it was lucky for us. It was just at the start of a class and intake starting. So we gathered all the troops kind of on Monday. And lucky for me, I had a lot of experience with online education as well as with my master's and all that. So we were able to, a few of us, break it into years and then break the years. And we kind of put everybody off into rooms, all the instructors, and started really planning on how to get this information out there. Because what you don't want to do, and what we knew right away, is you don't want to sit there in front of have your students sitting in front of a computer screen for 6 hours a day watching you lecture on Zoom, right? It just doesn't work. So we had to figure ways to get the information out there. So I've got a YouTube channel where I put out a lot of tutorial videos. So I had a ton of electrical videos ready to go. And then instructors started doing that as well. We started taking PowerPoints we had and putting narrations on top of them. And so we just started getting all this content together. And then we just started organizing it and trying to figure out ways to get it out there to our students. And that was like 6 months ago. I guess it's been almost not 6 months ago, but maybe 5 months ago.
Yeah.
And
wow.
it's a daily struggle, man. It's hard to figure out how to engage your classes. It's hard to get students to engage, because before, at least when I was face to face with students, I could see if a student was getting it. You could see if they were present. Right now, a lot of them, what you hear stories where they log into Zoom, but they don't have their camera on, which is fine. I don't want to invade their privacy, but sometimes you know that they're just not there. Like they'll put their camera on, they'll probably go off somewhere else and they're not paying attention. So
right.
It gets down to course design, and how do we design our courses so that we can run in what's called an asynchronous model, where we give them the content so that they can do a lot of self-directed learning, as opposed to a synchronous model where they have to be in front of a camera or talking to me face to face. So what I'm playing with right now is a blended model of that. So what I do is in the mornings at 8 a.m., I have my students log in. I have a little discussion about what the day is going to look like. Then I give them a 5 to 10 question quiz on the material that was covered the day before. And I give them like half an hour to work on that. So basically we just kind of leave the Zoom on. After that, I go over the answers one by one. So I throw up a whiteboard on the screen and kind of walk through it. So that takes, generally I keep them on for about an hour. Then I've got all my content laid out in what I call a checklist. So when they go into our learning management system, the computer system that they get all their info from, they can just click on, okay, there's the readings here, there's the videos here, there's a quiz here. So they just kind of go through that. And then in the afternoon, I bring them back at noon and I do group work with them. So I send them off into breakout rooms, give them some problems to work on together. And then I circulate amongst the breakout rooms, kind of making sure that everybody's kind of on track and talking.
Interesting.
It's different. Yeah, it's different. It's a lot of work though, to get them to engage, because what they'll do at the beginning was they would just go into these breakout rooms and nobody would talk. They would just do the problems. Nobody would say anything. So you got to get in there as an instructor and crack the jokes and, push them and prod them and ask them questions and find the guy that, is going to give you a hard time so that you can give them a hard time back and just get the rapport going.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's so crazy how it's switching like that. Like, how are you guys going to be doing exams?
Yeah, we've had many debate and discussion about that. So I'm of the opinion that our assessments need to be made so that they are cheat proof. And right now we train our students to take multiple choice exams, which, I mean, that's a whole other discussion, because we are training them to write the red seal, but all we're training them to do is memorize something so they can forget it. Right.
Yeah.
So if we could figure out ways to build assessments like case studies, or have them work on things and show the actual work and that sort of thing, to get them so that they don't have to cheat, right? It's just more of an authentic assessment. Right now, to stop them, what I've done is I basically built a huge question bank that my quizzes draw from. So the learning management system, this computer program we use, you can set up quizzes and exams that'll draw, like you say it's 30 questions, but it draws 30 random questions out of a bank of like 300 questions. And so then each student doesn't get the same question and they don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about that sort of thing happening. The biggest thing I do, though, to prevent all this, Colin, is I talk to my students about it. I just say, I understand that a lot of this could be open book now, and I get that, and that's good, because I want you guys to know how to research and how to look things up. So don't worry about that. I encourage you to look this stuff up as we go. But when it comes to the math stuff, you really got to know this stuff. And I really want to discourage you from, having a buddy on Discord that you're getting your answers from, because all you're going to do is screw yourself over. If you're having problems, you and I can work something out and we can get you there. But having these conversations with them makes a big difference. And then I've never assumed that all my students were cheating, right? I don't think they are. I think most of them aren't cheating. So why not kind of play to the ones that aren't, as opposed to the few that are? They're going to get weeded out eventually anyways.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I'm going through a similar process with getting my PMP, and it's a proctored exam. So basically, the thing with them is obviously you're paying a lot of money to have a proctor come in and watch you, but you have to take pictures of your surroundings so that there's nothing displayed anywhere. And if it looks clean, they let you proceed. You can't have any of the typical things in the room that you would normally have, like a phone or a calculator. I think you're allowed a pen and pencil. But then what they do is they break the exam up into segments. So after a segment is complete, you have like a little countdown timer goes, you can review your work, and then that segment's gone forever. You can go to the bathroom, you can come back, but you can't revisit that segment. And then it jumps into the second segment. And there's somebody checking in here and there. And they actually have some AI technology that can catch you if your eyes are drifting away from the computer screen for too long, which is just insane because I like to look out the window when I'm thinking of questions. So I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But
there's all that proctoring software. There's tons of it out there. And like the one we have that we use on our campus, Proctorio, I mean, it does the exact same stuff, right? But like you said, like there's times where your student might go like this or like that or whatever. And suddenly it flags them, right? And the way you get it set up is if their head moves that way too much, well, then you can shut them down. So you've got to make sure that if we're using these systems that we're using them properly. And then it's just, you got to be so careful because our students too, they're taking these courses in their bedrooms. Do we really want to be in their bedrooms? Well, like forcing them to show their living conditions, right? So I don't know, that could be another discussion, I guess, for another time. But
yeah, for sure. I mean, there's just so many little things that came to mind instantly in just talking about this, like just in revisiting school for myself in my mind as we're talking through this and being in electrical. And I had to put a lot of time in as a student. I spent a lot of time at the Bcit library, hitting the gym, going and, crushing the books because I wanted to do well. And I found that there's always that subset of students that isn't going to be able to kind of like you mentioned, memorize, regurgitate, and forget. There's the other ones that are really good at the project side. And I could see that being an asset as well. Like having a student deliver a project to you as a teacher and working through the things, right? There's so many cool models. Where do you think it's all headed in the next 5 years? Like, I don't know. Like, is it ever going to go back to normal?
No, that I can tell you, no. I don't think it's ever going to go back to normal. And I've had many a debate about that, but I hope it doesn't go back to normal because I don't think normal was necessarily working, right? I think, and not necessarily, it was working. We were still, like, I went through the system, you went through the system, and I am who I am because of it. So it's not a bad thing. But with the tools and everything we have available to us now, man, like, let's start using those and let's start changing it the way like that we could. Like you said, we have an opportunity to have like projects that we could have our students show their thought process and their workflow and all that. We can build assessments like that can be done online and they can show these things, right? As opposed to just, like you said, regurgitate or memorize, regurgitate, and then forget, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I hope it doesn't go back to normal. That's one of my biggest fears. But what the new normal is going to look like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I know what I'd like it to look like eventually, but we'll see.
So talk to me a little bit more about OER, because I know that you actually won an excellence award for the open education. Is it a system was what you would call it?
Mm-hmm. There's another organization in Ontario called eCampus Ontario, very similar. So they're a government funded agency that works towards getting openly licensed educational resources to students. So the idea behind it is, I mean, I've gone through university and my book costs were absolutely astronomical. And some of the books, and that's if you ever used them, right? You'd buy these textbooks that you would never use. Mm-hmm. Trade students, same thing. Like how many times, well, just like that quote said, I never was a big fan of the books, right? So I would never use the white binder that they talked about. I'd give them kind of notes that I'd made up on my own. So it's trying to speak the same language they did instead of having these weird terms thrown at them. So what open educational resources allows us to do is we can take things, like I've had a few grants where I've written textbooks and I can put it out there and an instructor can take what I've created. And if there's a chapter in there they don't like or don't want to use, they can just go ahead. They've got wherewithal to go ahead and legally just take that chapter out and kind of add in their own bit. They don't like the way I describe it. They can take it and they can change the wording to it. They want to add an image, go ahead, add that image. Like it gives them what's called a Creative Commons license. And so that's kind of the basis of that. So that all my videos and all that, they've all got these Creative Commons licenses to it because I want it just to get the information out there. Because our students right now, pay, I think it's what is that? I'm looking at my Delmar's book right now. Like
Delmar's, wow, I haven't heard that in a long time.
Oh, it's still there, buddy. Still there, right there.
Oh, man.
So they have to buy those, right? And those packages with the code book cost about $900, and they have to buy it twice in their apprenticeship because the books are only good for 3 years, and the code or for 4 years is their apprenticeship. The book changes every 3 years. Well, they got to get two. So, anyways, $2,000 to spend on textbooks that they don't necessarily use, that has good information in it, but not always the best. Delmar's itself is American, so we're talking about NEC as opposed to CEC.
Right.
So why not build these resources that I already had? I already built all these PowerPoints and notes and everything, and just put them out there for other people to use and for my students to have for free. And so it kind of helped them with the cost of bringing it down.
Yeah, I love that model. I think I've never heard that term before, but would that be something like, what about exploring something like the way that I'm taking my course for my PMP, and there's multiple ways you can do it, is through Udemy. So you pay whatever, it's like $20, and there's a Udemy course, and that can be accessed at any time, anywhere. You get a credential for it. Is there any online education platforms like that offer similar courses that aren't like a Bcit?
Not that, no, unfortunately for trades, no. There are people out there that are starting to build them, but they also come at a cost, right? And the problem is getting, especially in Canada, because we have that red seal, you have to have some sort of certification to teach these things.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But the nice thing is you can, like through organizations like eCampus Ontario or BC Campus, you can get grants to build these resources. So there are other instructors out there that are building these. They're like online courses, which is just like an online resource chock full of like videos and interactive elements and quiz banks and all this that they can use. So the movement's starting, it's really exciting. And for project management, I'm going to send you some links. I'm sure there's some open educational resources out there that you could probably find as well. So just for practice stuff for you to use. I mean, it depends on what your instructors want you to use, but.
Well, I mean, it's not even an instructor. It's pretty much, pay us a couple grand, and then if you pass the test, you're a project manager. But one of the other things that I wanted to ask you about is, you've been involved in education for 11 years, and we've touched on this, and this is beaten to death in every conversation I have on a weekly basis, and it's in the front of people's minds right now, is the labor shortage. I'm curious what you see in enrollment rates. I know that like the top three, plumbing, carpentry, and electrical, typically are the trades that don't have those types of issues as often, but have you seen any like increase or decline, or is it pretty much a flat line of enrollment for the electrical program?
The electrical program is always, there's a wait list. It depends on the years. And we go through waves, right? So there'll be a wave we'll have a wait list of years of foundation, and then it kind of follows through to the fourth year. And so you see these wait lists kind of follow along, and then the next wave comes. So there's always, I think right now, even I teach at a satellite campus in Surrey, BC, it's got a wait list for a couple of years, right? So these are electrically, there is a big lineup of people. Like I said earlier, I think the secret's out that trades is a good education to get. And so they're starting to figure out, and electrical, we get to be inside, man, a lot of the time, right? We're nice, dry, and we don't have to roll around in all the wet stuff that those plumbers do. They get paid a little more, but they work for it though.
Did you have a wait list when you went to school?
No, I remember I did my third and fourth year back to back, because third year was coming to an end, and then there was not a lot of work coming up. My boss said, if you want to try it for fourth, go for it. So I remember talking to the chief instructor. He said, yep, go ahead. We'll get you signed up. And then I just walked right into fourth year. How about you?
Yeah, that was the same thing I did. I did third and fourth year back to back. But when I actually wanted to get into my first year in pre-app, it was like over a year was a wait list at that point in time. And I kept calling because that's what they say you should do. If somebody drops a seat, you can maybe get in there. Yeah. And somebody on the other end of the phone said, we have this program called Trades Discovery. I recommend you give it a shot right now. The students with the top 2 highest marks in the class will get an automatic seat into any trade program they choose. So I went into Trades Discovery at that point in time. That would have been 2008, I believe, right out of high school. And I spent whatever it was, 4 months and 3 months in this program. I got to experience like automotive mechanic, joinery, welding, carpentry, plumbing, electrical. And then they capped it all off with a few quizzes and exams and projects. And then whoever got the best mark in the class got an automatic seat. And I just said, well, if I'm going to shortcut my career by 9 months and all I'm doing is sampling a bunch of trades, I may as well just go as hard as I can. And it wasn't like you're going super in depth. So it was relatively easy content to handle. And yeah, I ended up getting the top mark. And that's what got me my early seat into electrical. Otherwise, I would have waited and I don't know what would have happened in that year.
Yeah, it's amazing. First off, that's absolutely brilliant, Colin. I got to tell people about that. Way to go. I didn't know that the top marks got an automatic seat into a foundation program.
I don't know if they still do it. I think that's an interesting way to find people that actually want to be there.
Totally. And what a great way. And I've dealt with the Trades Discovery program at Bcit. It's amazing. What a great program. And so many students go through there and same thing. Like they know they want maybe a trade, but you get to spend a few months to see if you like it or not. So why not? So good on you for doing that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. One of the other things when it comes to stigmas here that is constantly thrown around, and I'd be curious to hear your take as an educator, is one of the biggest barriers to entry is not just how we've been brainwashed into thinking that apprenticeship can be a second choice career pathway. It's kind of a fallback plan. But a lot of times it's parents that are putting that reality into our minds of saying that you got to go to college or university. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything that you would like to say to parents, or any ways that you think they should think about trades or construction differently?
Yeah, my wife and I talk a lot about this because my wife's a pharmacist and I'm a tradesperson and an educator now. And looking at what happened during COVID, the two people that kept working were educators and farms and like healthcare, right? Like these are the things you need to start looking for useful avenues for your students, your kids to go down. I've got 4 kids, so I'm thinking about this constantly. One of them's going into grade 12 next year. And while I think it's great to pursue your little passions like I did with my English literature, at the end of the day, that was going to get me nowhere. And it was, I'm not trying to take away from those people out there who are like going to film school and stuff like that think, I'm pursuing my passion, I'm going to do it no matter what. And I get that. But if you've got a kid who's just not like solely focused on what they want, then maybe start looking at, maybe get them into a trade for that or encourage them, because what's going to happen is they're going to take like their gap year while they try to figure themselves out. Yeah. And 1 year rolls into 2 years, rolls into 3 years, rolls into 4 years. That's kind of basically what happened to me with a school thrown in once in a while, like a college and university once every couple of years, right? So why not just take the time, instead of me working as a landscaper in the summers making my $12.50 an hour, why didn't I work for those 4 years right out of high school, get my ticket? And I see some of these students doing it. They're making $80,000 a year without overtime. And then you can go on and do other things. There's lots of students out there doing that, going back to get their degrees afterwards, but having something to fall back on. You will always need somebody to fix something. Electricians, you're always going to need the lights on. You're always going to need the dryers fixed. Something's always going to be broken down, right? Mm-hmm. So there's always a fallback to go to. And so when it comes to pushing your kids in a certain direction, just try to think that eventually there could be something like what happened with the pandemic and people lost their jobs, except for tradespeople. They were working, and educators, they were working, healthcare, they were working. So look for these degrees that you can, be kind of are useful. Not that the other ones aren't, but, have some sort of staying power.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the last place that I wanted to go here was just in getting to know you now and in my research about you and how passionate you are about the industry and about youth and about giving back and educating. I wanted to know if you had any advice or what advice you would give to an apprentice or somebody that's early in their career as a tradesperson that's just about to get out into the workforce. If you have any words of wisdom for somebody like that.
I don't know about words of wisdom, but here's my perspective in all of this is it's hard. Like I tell my foundation students, the first 2 weeks are going to be the hardest 2 weeks you've ever worked in your life. You're going to come home, you're going to go to bed at like 7 o'clock. You're going to get up and do it all over again. You're going to be just bagged. It's going to get easier. And before you know it, it's going to be fun. And then for those that have been in the industry for a while and then start hating it because they're working for the wrong company, start looking outside of the company that you're in. There's other options. And your trade is a stepping stone. You're not going to want to be pulling wire or installing things for the rest of your career. You're going to want to move up to do something else. There's no reason why you can't do that with the trade. A lot of people think that you're stuck on the tools for the rest of your life if you go into a trade. Look at me, look at you, right? Like I've got now a master's degree in education. You're working on your project management. Like these are steps that we can take. Do your time, and it's amazing what can happen. And like we were talking about earlier, just let life kind of guide you that way. Work hard, but you're going to start seeing these different opportunities open up. So it can be frustrating sometimes, but every job is. And so it didn't matter if you went to university and got your degree. There's going to be days you hated your job. Same thing in trades. You're just going to power through it. And next thing you know, you're going to be in a situation that's even better than it was before.
Awesome. My next question is relatively the same, but it's more geared towards the trades entrepreneurs. So you've taught this program. I feel as though you're an entrepreneur at heart in a lot of the things that you do. Do you have any, I don't know if I call it advice or wisdom, or maybe things that you've noticed are becoming like avenues people should think about pursuing outside of just, I'm going to rough houses in or start the next tenant improvement company in a saturated market? Is there any opportunities you think that would be interesting to explore that you've seen pop up, and maybe any advice you'd give to a future entrepreneur?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question, Colin. Work on yourself first and foremost. Like, I know it sounds woo-woo and stuff like that, but you talk to any successful entrepreneur and they will say that the amount of time that they spent investing in themselves, learning like their morning routines, learning how to like those self-help books and podcasts and everything, that by far the best things I ever did was get into podcasts, start listening to podcasts. Now I'm a podcaster too.
Yep.
Self-help books, my meditation practice in the morning. Like these are the things that, yeah, it sounds woo-woo, but they build and they make you more productive. So take that time and like spend that time in reflection and realize that your business is not just about making money. It's got to be way more than just about making money. If you're doing it just to make money, it's not going to work. You talk to anybody. It's those people that find purpose and want to change the world in a meaningful way. They're the ones that change the world in a meaningful way, right? Like Steve Jobs, yeah, the guy was a bit of an a-hole, but he had vision and he wanted to change things. He wanted to push against status quo all the time, to the point where he was almost driving all of his employees nuts. But look what's happened with Apple, right? And now that he's gone, it's not the company that was before. So in order to innovate and create, you've got to do that. You've got to just kind of keep pushing forward like that.
Awesome. And for anybody, just anybody in general, do you have any calls to action for anybody listening? It doesn't have to be related to trades. It can be super broad, maybe something that's been in the back of your mind lately. Anything that you would like to say? We're in a time of turmoil and strange times with COVID, and nobody really knows what's up and what's down right now. Is there anything you'd like to put out there for the world to hear?
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning, actually. Always be reading. And I know I push that all the time with my students too. And then I always get students telling me, well, I'm not a reader, so no. But the thing is, with the technologies we have these days, audible.com, right? Like you can read these books by just popping in your earbuds and going for walks, and you can learn, like it opens up your world immensely. Get into podcasts. Like what you're into MMA or whatever, listen to Joe Rogan's podcast. That guy is going to blow your mind. Then he'll take you down to, you'll go down to all these other dark paths, not dark paths, but all these other paths that'll just, you start opening your mind. So yeah, it's amazing what just reading, and by reading, I mean just taking in other content. And that was the time to do it, right? We had time. A lot of us were sitting and waiting for things to happen. And people were talking about, well, it's a great time to watch Netflix, but at the same time, it's a great time to get caught up on all your podcasts and all your books and audiobooks and just make yourself better.
100%. Is there anything we left off the table that you'd like to get into before we get into some wrapping up?
No, I can go. I can keep going on everything.
Yeah,
so
man, we could go forever.
I know.
We'll definitely do a part two. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on in your life. So how about you lay out where people can find more out about you, your podcast, your resources, any place you'd like to point people to? Now's the place to do it.
Right on. So my number one spot right now is my YouTube channel. I've got a YouTube channel called The Electric Academy. So if you're in the electrical trade going through school, it's just quick 5 to 10 minute little tutorials on like series, circuits, parallels, transformers. I try to pump them out every day. So you can find me there. Social media, Twitter is probably the best bet to get me. So it's at Chad H. Flinn. And so if you're into education at all, I'm a big part of that kind of edu Twitter or whatever they call it. So you can find me there. Yeah, you can always if you just want to chat or whatever, reach out to me at chadflinn@gmail.com. There's a great place to find me as well. My podcast, I've got an electrical podcast for my students called The Electric Academy. You find it on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. I'm also part of another one to do more with trades education called Praxis Pedagogy. So again, that's hosted by a gentleman named Tim Carson. He used to be the chief instructor of piping trades at Bcit, and he works for BC campus right now. So he's the co-host, and once in a while I kind of come in as a co-host at large. So we're pumping those out weekly as well. So you can find us there.
Awesome. And for everybody listening, you know that I always post all of those links to everything mentioned on toolspodcast.com. So you can head over there and you don't have to try and scribble any of this down while you're out driving or walking. It'll all be available there. So head over there. We'll link out to everything that Chad has mentioned. And dude, it was awesome having you on. I can't wait to have you back on as things progress, as we get through COVID and out the other side and start to understand what education's going to look like. I really appreciate your time, man. And thank you for all that you do for the industry and giving back to our youth and for just being a rock star out there.
No problem. Thank you for having me, man. Like, I love these things. I love it. It's just so much fun getting talking, right? So Thank you.
Could talk forever. Awesome.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap, everybody.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Tools of the Trade podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. For show notes, blog posts, resources, and access to our newsletter, check out toolspodcast.com.